guys, welcome back to another bookish video. So today I wanted to complain. Gonna put this nice and simple. We're gonna put this right out in front. I want to complain today. And today I want to complain about YA and YA readers. Part of what I want to complain about today, guys, is I have a hard time trusting other people's reviews of books. Not just necessarily ones I like, but ones I don't like. And part of the reason I have trouble trusting other people's reviews is I keep seeing this infamous line being thrown around. And that line is, "It's just another typical YA book. It's a cliche YA book. It's cliche tropes. It's cliche this. It's typical characters. It's typical character arcs." And I feel like this phrase is very unfair to the books. Talking about myself for a second and not other people, I generally read YA. I have read 59 books this year to date at the time of filming, and almost every single one of those, except for I believe 3 or 4, were YA stories. And last year I believe I read 42 books. Most of those were YA. Knowing that about me, guys, I read a lot of YA. Clearly, this shelf is YA. Okay, now that you know that, I know almost every single typical YA trope there is. I know almost every single time how a YA story is going to end. I know almost every single time the arc that characters are going to make. I know almost every single time the main couple within a couple pages of the book. That's just what happens when you read the same type of thing over and 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 over again. You're going to learn when and what to predict. That is not the fault of the book. I have made reviews before where I have clearly said, I saw this couple getting together. I saw this twist coming. That is on me. That is not on the writer of the book, because the writer of the book is telling their story. They are telling the story from which they see the story should be said. That is not on them that I can see where the ending is going to end up. That is on me because I've read 59 YA books this year and 42 YA books last year. I know these stories and I know how they're going to go. So when I see people's reviews where they're saying that this is just a typical YA book, that does not mean I shouldn't read it. That does not mean it is a bad book. It simply means that you've probably read enough YA in your life that you know how stories end up. Now, in case you are totally lost and you have no idea what I am talking about, let's talk about the Twilight Era, okay?
If you don't know what Twilight is, where the hell have you been?
So Twilight comes out, Twilight blows up. Every girl and or guy on the planet is obsessed with Twilight, or has heard of it, or knows that you're Team Edward or Team Jacob, that knows Renesmee is a weird name. You generally know this stuff. So once Twilight came out, all these other authors were writing stories, and all these publishing companies were trying to get their stories out. So it's called the Twilight Era because everything that came out around Twilight was generally the same story. And it was generally a love triangle. It was generally werewolves or vampires, and it was generally a moody guy and a sweet innocent girl, and it was generally high school age kind of thing or starting over in life. My point is that with the Twilight Era, all these books came out around the same time, and they were all basically the same story. This is about the time that I noticed that people were really complaining about how it's just a typical YA book and it's a cheesy YA book. And yes, it is, but because of the fact that we all know the Twilight story, because of the fact that all these books generally had the same plot, of course they're going to be typical YA. When you're looking for a YA romance in a YA romance, you're gonna get a YA romance. When you're looking for YA fantasy in a YA fantasy, fantasy, you're going to get YA fantasy. Now, obviously, we all have our own individual favorite series, standalone stories, blah, 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 for whatever reason. It's no secret, Throne of Glass is my all-time favorite, which even in Throne of Glass, there's stuff that I can go, yep, that's a typical YA thing. Yep, typical moody, male, whatever. I understand that, and I know that, but the fact of the matter is, I endorse this series, and I love this series, simply because of what's around those typical YA things. There are plenty of books on this shelf that I can go through and go, this book is exactly like that one. This one's exactly like that one. And it's because of the fact that we have the same main ingredients. And I guess to hopefully end some of this rambling, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it is not fair to say that a book is bad or that a author is a horrible writer simply because of the fact you as a reader know this stuff. It's not their fault that you generally read YA, and it is not their fault that you know most of these cliche things, so therefore you're anticipating them. As someone who is trying to write a book, and I can assume most writers can attest to this, there's some things about YA books you can't change. Let me rephrase that. You can change them. However, popular demand is a thing for a reason, and that is not me saying that writers need to change their books just to sell copies and appease their readers and blah 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 blah, but there is still a sense of you have to generally stick into the theme. You can't write an overly steamy, detailed AF romance book and call it a YA romance. Keeping in mind that even as a 22-year-old and even knowing several people in their 30s and 40s who thoroughly enjoy YA, you have to understand that YA's purpose is more directed towards kids in high school transitioning from middle school reading into high school reading into adult reading. Now, that is not to say that if you are older, how dare you like YA, because I'm probably going to be reading most of these books until I am 80 years old and on my deathbed. That is simply me saying, understand that these writers have to be able to appeal to a wide variety of audiences. So there's some things you can't throw into a YA book and expect it to be categorized as a YA book. You can't make a children's picture book with the same 5 words repeated and call it an adult fantasy book. It's just not how it works. Now, some of this stuff you guys will either agree or severely disagree on, but I feel the need to just throw it out there that you can't say a book is bad and use the argument that it is a typical book. I agree that you can say that there are cliche and typical things inside the book, but the entire book is not a cliche. I recently did a review of The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and in that review I stated that I believe she found as many cliche fae/fairy things she could and threw them all into a book. Now, that is not me saying the entire book is a cliche or the entire book is cheesy or typical. That is just me saying, for myself, every time a fae thing came up, I felt like it was just too much, and I felt like it was something that I have seen 100 times. Now, it is totally okay if you find a book that fits the exact same way as I felt about The Cruel Prince and you don't like it because of that reason. That's fine. That is totally fine. I'm just talking about the people who I see on every book I read, and I do go through some of the comments on every book that I read, and when it's the same people over and over again that are saying this book is typical, this book's cheesy, this book's cliche, it's not the books, it's you. And that is not me like spilling tea or starting shade or any of the hip lingo now. That is just me simply saying it's probably you as a reader and not the book's fault, and maybe it's time to try adult fantasy or romance or nonfiction or adult fiction. Just try a new genre and see what you think then. Don't just assume it's you're reading non-stop bad books. It might just be the books that you are picking up. That is all I have for you guys today. I know that was a stupid long rant. Let me know down below though, guys, because I really want to know your guys' thoughts and opinions on this. I have been thinking about this a lot. As I said, I see a lot of reviews of people saying playing / thinking this kind of stuff, so let me know for sure down below. Make sure you guys give a big thumbs up on this video if you would like me to rant some more about some random crap. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and let's grow this channel. I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. As always guys, stay awesome and I will see you guys next time.